And I thank them so much for making this journey. You are on the right side of history. And you're not alone. We are in solidarity with each and every one of you and your colleagues in another state hosted by my great friend, J.B. Pritzker, who welcome you as well. As I said, history will judge us on how we respond to this moment. But here in New York, we will not stand on the sidelines with the timid souls on the sidelines who don't care, will not invest their heart and soul into this battle. This is a war. We are at war. And that's why the gloves are off, and I say, bring it on.
All right, folks, we have some positive breaking news, a continuation of the story that we covered yesterday about Democrats fighting back and pushing back against Donald Trump's desperate scheme to rig the 2026 midterms in advance. That was Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul of New York, and she, in a press conference earlier today, she just went off. She said that the gloves are off, that we are at war, and she is looking to gerrymander in retaliation against Republicans who are trying to rig the election. So now it's not just Governor Gavin Newsom of California, Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois. New York is rising up to resist Trump's power grab. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we're going to take a look at some other clips of Governor Hochul's press conference. And I will also say, while this is going on, Republican Governor Greg Abbott and his lackey, his henchman, the corrupt Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, they are lashing out in rage at the fact that more than 50 Texas Democrats have fled the state successfully, which denies the quorum needed for the Texas legislature to advance legislative business, including the heavily gerrymandered maps requested by Donald Trump, which would steal 5 seats from congressional Democrats. Until those Democrats return, they can't pass those maps. So Abbott and Paxton and Maga are furious. But let's first get to Governor Hochul. This is another clip.
Last decade, we redid redistricting, hard to say. Do you think, given this situation where we've had these court battles, everything, that in this 2027 amendment that you may put forward, that the Independent Redistricting Commission should be disbanded or changed in some way so that you don't have to go through that again in 32?
Yes. I'm tired of fighting this fight with my hand tied behind my back. With all due respect to the good government groups, politics is a political process. And to think that we're going to do this with a purity test and make sure it's completely fair to everybody involved. The reason we are able to draw the lines because we're Democrats, because the majority of people in this state selected us, elected us to be leaders. And when we say that we cannot use that power to its fullest, then we're abdicating the responsibility that we all have. Republicans take over the legislature, they can have at it. But until then, we're in charge, and we're sick and tired of being pushed around when other states don't have the same aspirations that we always have had. And I hold those dear. But I cannot ignore that the playing field has changed dramatically. And shame on us if we ignore that fact and cling tight to the vestiges of the past. That era is over. Donald Trump eliminated that forever.
So listen, this is really encouraging because of the big 3 blue governors, Newsom, Pritzker, and Hochul. Hochul has been by far, I think, the weakest in terms of her willingness to fight back, her willingness to push back on Trump corruption. That's not to say that she doesn't oppose it, but she's the most reticent, right? So for example, Eric Adams, the current mayor of New York, who used to be a Democrat, he recently declared that he was independent. He was under investigation by the Biden administration. And then Trump corruptly engaged in a quid pro quo to secure Adams' cooperation with policy items on the Trump agenda. And we talked about that in previous videos. Now, Kathy Hochul had the power, given the corruption allegations and the evidence against Adams, which prompted the investigations in the first place, plus what we then learned about the quid pro quo with Trump. She had the power to fire him, to shit can Eric Adams, and she chose not to. She was feckless. Now she's stepping up. The pressure's getting to her because of people like you, people watching this show and other shows, people who are patriots, people who are saying, you know what, no, If the Republicans are going for broke, Democrats have a right to politically defend themselves. And I do view this as political self-defense. So keep the pressure up. Keep sharing stuff like this. Keep encouraging, pushing, and telling her she'll be rewarded. If you fight on behalf of the Democratic Party, if you push back on Trump's authoritarianism, you'll be rewarded. That's what we need to be telling our politicians. So she's changing her tune. She's adopting some of the similar rhetoric of Gavin Newsom and Pritzker, who are much more likely to just naturally predisposed to push back on Trump's authoritarianism, saying, hey, listen, we have aspirational politics. Yes, blue states are much more likely to engage in what's called good governance programs by trying to eliminate gerrymandering by way of independent redistricting commissions to take politics out of it. But if Republicans are going to take advantage of that and ruthlessly try to gerrymander their states to entrench a permanent partisan majority, then no, we're not obligated to simply roll over and take the ass kicking. So good on Governor Hochul. One last clip, and then we'll dive into some other things.
Governor, why would it be unfair to say that New York Democrats are abandoning good government and good democracy in an effort to save democracy?
Well, that's an interesting question. But if that's what's called for, I will put saving democracy as my top priority at any cost, because it is under siege. Just like those who put on a uniform to fight in battles across the ages. For centuries, we've stood up and fought. Blood has been shed. This is our moment in 2025 to stand up for all that we hold dear and not let it be destroyed by a bunch of renegades in a place called Texas, which I respect these people, but we've had our battles with them, the Attorney General, the Senator. We know who we stand with. We stand with the people of this country.
So again, she's still finding her footing on this. This is new for her. But again, the fact that she's using this sort of similar rhetoric to Pritzker and Newsom, it comes more naturally to them because they've been more practiced in it. This is good, folks. This is what I mean by positive breaking news. You all have successfully pushed Kathy Hochul into adopting a much more aggressive posture in the face of bad faith Republican gerrymandering. And again, we will talk about Governor Greg Abbott of Texas in just a second, but I want to close the loop on Hochul herself. So this is a good Politico article about this. Hochul embraces gerrymandering in New York. The governor spent Monday hosting Texas Democrats who fled the state. Kathy Hochul openly embraced the full-fledged gerrymandering of congressional districts in New York to favor Democrats on Monday, marking a significant shift in her push to combat similar pro-Republican changes in states like Texas. Her escalation in the political arms race to redraw the boundaries of congressional maps comes at a dramatic moment. Hochul was flanked by a delegation of 6 Texas lawmakers who fled their home state to block Republicans there from pushing through their own gerrymander. The redistricting skirmish in New York is one front in a much larger battle nationwide. And this is another point. Aside from Texas, New York, California, Ohio, and Missouri are also considering their own similar changes to gain a political advantage ahead of next year's midterms election. So again, it's not just, remember, Texas started this. Trump said, hey, Texas, I want you to steal 5 seats from the Democrats. Open about it, so transparent about it, bragging about it. Texas complied. So California is, of course, flexed in retaliation. Now we're starting to see New York and Illinois do it as well. So now Ohio and Missouri, which lean Republican, are threatening to do so in response. This is now an arms race, which will determine which party controls the House and how Trump will implement his agenda. It also comes as Hochul is increasingly being drawn into the national spotlight. Over the weekend, she publicly feuded with Texas GOP Senator Ted Cruz on social media over his criticism that she wore a headscarf at a Muslim NYPD officer's funeral. It was, super gross by Cruz, by the way. Check that out. A fucking loser. Hochul's reelection next year coincides with the midterm elections. And that's another good point. Again, this is why it's you have leverage, folks. Liberals and progressives who want fighting Democrats, again, metaphorically fighting, you all have leverage over Hochul. Hey, Governor Hochul, you took over for the disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo. You want your seat, then you will be ruthless and you will be effective. You will fight for the Democratic Party first because the Republican Party is going for broke. No more of this mealy-mouthed aspirational bullshit. Democrats have relentlessly tried at the federal level to ban gerrymandering in red states and blue states. We tried to take it off the table for everyone. Republicans rejected that because they want to ruthlessly gerrymander. They don't want to be prevented from gerrymandering, even if Democrats are prevented from gerrymandering as well. They refuse to disarm, even when Democrats are like, we'll disarm with you at the same time. They don't want to. So now you say that's over, and you viciously and relentlessly prosecute a pro-Democrat agenda. That's what you do. And those of you who live in New York, who are eligible voters, need to make that case. Governor Hochul, you do this. You rally the proverbial troops. You lead the proverbial fight to undermine what Republicans and Trump are doing elsewhere. You optimally gerrymander New York to the best of your ability. You do that, you will win re-election in a landslide, because we want a fighter. You fight for us, you will be rewarded. If you don't fight for us, you will be punished and kicked out of office. That's what you all should be doing. That's what we should all be doing, those of you in New York. I digress. Let's continue. The redistricting effort she's pushing in New York could open the door to a new set of maps that give Democrats an edge in 22 of the 26 congressional districts by 2028. They won 19 of the 26 districts in 2024. Hochul has embraced changing New York's process since the fight over the Lone Star State maps escalated last month. Other Democrats have gone along as well. New York lawmakers introduced a state constitutional amendment last week that would let Democrats make mid-decade adjustments to their maps before the 2028 election cycle. Hochul's comments show she and state Democrats are looking to go much further, though. The amendment would still have prohibited maps drawn with the intent of disadvantaging Republicans and would have left an independent redistricting commission in place for 2032. On Monday, she said rules like that are a relic. Any amendment that changes the rules would need to be approved by the legislature in 2026, and then again the following year. It would likely be brought to the voters as a referendum in 2027. Other top New York Democrats indicated Monday that they're willing to go along with a more aggressive approach than already what's on the table. Democratic states have gone to independent redistricting, said Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie. It's difficult to ask New York, California, and any other Democratic-leaning states to play nonpartisan while Republicans play very partisan. We're open to fighting back any way we can, said Senate Democratic spokesperson Mike Murphy. Hochul said she supported using the congressional maps for partisan purposes well before the Texas plan emerged. So, again, this is where the one challenge is, which is that California and New York, because they have attempted to implement things as a gesture of good faith and good governance to reduce the likelihood of gerrymandering, that is now creates hurdles that they have to try to overcome, and they may not succeed. I hope they do, and I'm sure you all as well. But what we should push is for them to push anyway. Keep pushing. Try to overcome. Do whatever you can legally to overcome these obstacles and do this political self-defense. But of course, again, it just demonstrates a contrast between the two parties. We're going to wrap up on this particular tangent because I mentioned at the beginning that Texas Governor Greg Abbott and his Attorney General Ken Paxton are furious about what's going on. They're threatening, oh my God, arrests and other things. Kyle Cheney, I think he's Politico. He says Abbott's legal threat against fleeing Democrats may not have the teeth it appears. It could take months to resolve and is not certain to work even if he wins in court. This is in response to Abbott saying he might treat fleeing lawmakers as having forfeited their offices and move to replace them. He also suggests they could be subject to felony charges if they accept payments to cover impending fines. Notably, the Paxton opinion that Abbott cites doesn't actually say lawmakers who break quorum are removable. In fact, it says this is a fact-specific question only resolvable by a court. The opinion also does not say it's unconstitutional to break quorum. The opinion by Paxton explicitly takes no position on whether breaking quorum is unconstitutional because, as Paxton said, it was tied up in litigation at the time. So, of course, Abbott is misrepresenting the legal strength of his arguments. Now, of course, it's also worth remembering that Texas has very right-wing courts, so we shouldn't assume that the courts will take the side of the Democrats, but the bottom line is it will need to be litigated and decided, which could take time. They also followed up with Abbott's legal threat against fleeing Democrats may not have the teeth it appears. It could take months to resolve and is not certain to work out even if he wins in court. For one thing, Abbott/Paxton must file, quote, quo warranto actions to ask the courts to remove 51 Democrats from office. Those must be filled on an individual basis in multiple districts with outcomes that could vary wildly. For another, even if Abbott wins a clean sweep in court, uncertain at best, then he's left with 51 vacancies to fill via time-consuming special elections, which could just put new Democrats back in office who follow their predecessors' path. Paxton acknowledged this complication in a podcast today. They'd have to file actions against each of the fleeing lawmakers and, quote, every district would be different, he said. So, even though Texas still favors the Republicans, their threats are much weaker, much thinner than they would have people to believe. So, Republicans are pissed off right now. Maga's pissed. If you go on social media, they're frothing at the mouth in rage. Arrest them, kick them out, do anything. Because Texas Democrats simply refuse to roll over and let Trump just disingenuously, cynically, nakedly grab power to pad his congressional advantage in ways that if Democrats had attempted to do, certainly at the start, these same Republicans would also be furious, but it's okay when Trump does it. Democrats are not obligated to roll over. They have every right, and I would argue they have the obligation to resist to the best of their ability, not just in Texas, but elsewhere. So again, this is what I mean where I'm saying we're seeing positive breaking news. The outcome still remains to be seen. It's possible Texas will succeed and California and New York will fail because of the hurdles that they've imposed on themselves in a gesture of goodwill and good governance to eliminate gerrymandering. And those hurdles now work against them. But what is important is we must acknowledge when Democratic politicians like Hochul and the Texas Democrats and Gavin Newsom, whoever, stand up and fight. And we have to tell them that if they do so, they will be rewarded. It's incentives 101. They need to keep it up. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.